What is going on, guys? Welcome back to this week's edition of the Power Play. We have some really interesting things going on in the NHL to talk about this week. We have all of the major trades that went on. Was it the end of last week? End of last week. I was still on the beach, so I was following along from my beach chair. How was you guys? How was your breaks?
Mine was very relaxing. I just went home for a little while, back to good old Waynesboro, and then back to Pittsburgh. But I'm leaving for California tomorrow for a few days, so no complaints on my end. How was your break, Chris?
I also escaped. I went down to Florida for a couple of days, which was very nice, except the trip back was depressing, just seeing the snow over the mountains. But today we were blessed with some warm weather, so bring on the next couple of months.
Okay, and let's jump right into it, shall we? Especially with the major trades and the trade deadline. We had St. Louis, Kessler didn't go anywhere, Callahan, Miller and Ott, Vanek, Luongo, Tim Thomas. Out of all of the major trades that went on, who do you think was the major acquisition for another team?
Honestly, I think for me, the biggest surprise to me was that Kessler didn't go anywhere. I mean, he was kind of at the front of all the trade talks for weeks leading up to it. So I think, personally, to see that he didn't go anywhere and he ended up staying in Vancouver, that was probably the biggest shock to me. Aside from that, whenever we're talking about acquisitions, I think seeing Ryan Miller going to St. Louis, I had a feeling he was going to go somewhere. I just wasn't sure where, but actually seeing it happen and see that those moves being made, that was a little surprising. I mean, Ryan Miller has been with Buffalo ever since he started, so it's going to be weird getting used to seeing him in a different jersey.
And that gives St. Louis just a great 1-2 tandem as far as goaltending is concerned. I know right now they're leading the Western Conference with 94 points. And you look at them defensively as well as offensively. They're scoring goals and they're saving pucks. They're going to be a tough team to beat down the stretch. And sort of Ryan Miller's just another player. And if you don't have good defense, I know it's not going to help you that much. But he proved for Buffalo that they would have lost 95% of those games by more than 5 goals in the games that he started. So it's going to be interesting to see. Also, Vanek at Montreal. I feel like Montreal's 11 points behind Pittsburgh right now, and they're sitting sort of 1 point ahead of Toronto and 3 points above Tampa Bay. So I feel like it's going to be an interesting race for third in the Eastern Conference. So I'd say watch out for Montreal.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, especially after now that they, like you said, they acquired Vanek. So they've got a pretty strong team, and St. Louis definitely has a strong team now too. So, I mean, I know that's in the Western Conference, but I think it's going to be interesting to see which teams start to emerge in the final weeks of the regular season just because of the trades that went down last week.
And similar who maybe doesn't perform as well because of those trades. I'm sure sort of a Callahan or a St. Louis, if they don't perform sort of near the end of the season, then a lot of people will be pointing fingers at general managers.
Oh, of course. There's going to be a lot of talk of was it worth it, and was it really something that each team should have invested in? Giving up those draft picks and giving up the players that they did. So it's always the same every year, though. You at the time it seems like the right thing to do, and then you look back on it and you're always going to question it, no matter what the outcome is. So,
were you surprised that Pittsburgh wasn't more of a mover during the period, or is that team just stable enough right now that they don't really need to make any blockbuster moves?
It was interesting. I think it's happened a lot for the trade deadline and also in free agency the past couple of years that Pittsburgh just gets so hype about these things. I know Kessler watch, Yager watch, Parise watch. It was interesting, but I'm not sure. I wasn't shocked because I feel like I had set myself up I knew it was going to be a letdown. I mean, all faith in Shiro, but I think it was interesting that we didn't make that big move, but I wasn't too sure about it in the first place.
I totally agree. I definitely expected Pittsburgh to do something. Primarily just because we have the loss of Pascal Dupuis. I expected Shiro to try to look for someone, and I know he was going after Kessler for that reason. But just because we have that almost like a gaping hole because Dupuis was such an integral part of the team. So they still have that question. I mean, we did take 2 very, very good players that I think can step into those top roles and whatnot. But Yeah, I was a little bit surprised with Shiro, especially since, for the past 2 or 3 seasons, he's been making a lot of blockbuster moves that have really left everyone in the league, almost kind of dumbfounded that he was able to pull them off. So, I don't know, but you never know what he's got up his sleeve for later, and you never know that sometimes the smallest moves can make the biggest difference.
Do you worry, though, similar to, I know last year, there was some blockbuster moves made. Do you worry that, I know one of the things coming out of last year's team was that they couldn't bond quick enough? Like, you're messing with the sort of DNA of the team. I know last year's team, all the acquisitions made great improvements to the team and added lots of, there was goals, assists, or just good play towards the end of the season. But do you think that at the end of the trade deadline, you're sitting first before Boston overtook you, your team's going well, sure you have a few injuries, but what team sort of really doesn't have injuries at this stage of the year?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question to ask. I think every team has experienced some kind of injury from one of their major players in one way or another. But
if they dropped 4 or 6 games, or sort of Flurry was in a slump, or a couple of players or something, I'd understand sort of a blockbuster trade, but that team's been working well all year. Sure, they've dropped their game occasionally, but they're looking really good. I feel like the Penguins are always one of those teams that you watch towards the end of the year.
Yeah, and kind of backtracking a little bit to what you said about last year's problems with the blockbuster trades, I think one of the biggest issues with last season was that, one, it was a shortened season, so even the players that were already there didn't have all the time that they've had in the past to get in game form and get ready and almost kind of create that flow that you almost need 82 games to do. So that was a part of it, and then the other part of that was you're going to throw in these new players in the middle of an already shortened season. That's... in a way, you can't blame them for that. I mean, I can see what Shiro was trying to do last year, take advantage of the shortened season and really almost kind of stack the team up a little bit to give yourself a good shot at a cup run. But, yeah, definitely the lockout last year was a big factor in that. So, looking at this season differently, yeah, I mean, we only have 6 weeks until the playoffs start, so we need to see whether Gosh and Stempniak can fit into the player dynamic as well. I mean, we are running out of time. It's almost kind of like a repeat of last season. But it'll be interesting to see moving forward how they kind of fit, just because the core of players that you have on the team right now, they have been playing since September instead of since January, like last year.
And kind of moving away from the Penguins here for a second, one of the most interesting things that I thought about the trade deadline, and if you were on Twitter or social media at all during the time after everything had gone down, two of the most talked about topics were St. Louis and Luongo both being upset, and that's rumored to be why they kind of moved where they did. St. Louis is rumored to be upset about the Olympics. Luongo upset about not starting in the Heritage Classic. I can sort of see Luongo's point, but as for St. Louis, he won a gold medal. He ended up there anyways, whether it was not really by accident, but because of Stamkos, but he won a gold medal anyways. Like, does he have to still be so upset and so bitter about it that he's just... It's a topic of discussion. It was around everywhere if you had been looking about it, especially St. Louis more than Luongo. I don't know why, because for me, St. Louis, it didn't make as much sense for him to be upset.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, I can see where Luongo would have been a little bit upset. I mean, he is their number one goalie in Vancouver, and to not start something as big as the Heritage Classic, I can see where his ego would have been bruised a little bit. But to make a big stink out of that, I mean, they're all adults, you play the game, I guess the coach thought he wasn't hot at the moment. And even though it is the Heritage Classic, it still counts as a game. And, at this point in the season, you're trying to get as many points as you can. So, yeah, I can see where he was upset about it. I just don't think he needed to make a big show of it like he did.
Well, it's worth 2 points, not 20 points. So he said it's just another game, and he's on a new team now, and he probably shouldn't have to worry about starting anytime soon, because I think Florida's 33 points behind Pittsburgh right now in the standings. So I feel like that's going to be a rebuilding project for him, and he's just going to have to get used to just playing again and not on a winning team.
But what do you think about St. Louis and the gold medal? And he's still so fired up over it, allegedly, even though in the end, you still have your gold medal, but the grudge was obviously still there.
He's a big boy. He has his own opinions, and he's entitled to what he says, and I feel like a lot of people probably look at his thoughts and disagree with what he has to say, but at the same time, he went over there, he wasted a couple of weeks, he could have been training, he could have been doing other things. I know to play for the Olympic team, sort of, and to go over there was a huge deal, but he was obviously disappointed, so hopefully that's out of his system.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing more to say on that issue. Like you said, he's a big kid, he can handle it, you know. I mean, it is kind of, disappointing, but like you said, he still has the gold medal, so, you still have that to show for it.
Okay, well, we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we are going to be talking about the games that are going on tonight. Now that the NHL is back in full swing, I believe it's our first show that everything has been going down, and we're not talking about the Olympics. And we will be right back. If you're not following us on Twitter, you probably should be. We are at the Power Play 14. We are Daisy, Katie, and Chris, and we will be right back.